Hi, this is Cayman with S&B, and today we're installing our cold air intake kit on this Explorer ST. This fits all Explorer STs. We're doing our intake today. We're also coming out with a cold side pipe and a hot side pipe. If you already received the intake, take out this piece of paper. It has a QR code right here. Scan it with your camera. It'll take you to our step-to-step install instructions, so you don't have to listen to me. Thank you. First step is going to be taking a 13 mil and getting these bolts out for the strut brace. We're going to remove this out so we can have some more clearance. Now we're going to be using a 7 mil to remove the hose clamps off of the intake box, as well as the coupler for the upper tube there. A short socket would be better for down here, but we'll make this one do. Now we're going to remove the driver's side tube. Again with the 7 mil, loosen up the hose clamp, get this starting to come off. And then after this, we'll come over and start removing these connectors. This first connector, just depress both sides. There's another depressor with the same, or another connector that is the same kind of connection. Then this yellow connection, I'll move it this way so you can see. You'll pull up on these two tabs like that, so then slide out connector. And that just comes right off as well. Then we'll use a panel popper. This one actually doesn't even need a panel popper to pull out that connection. Now this next step, we provide these two quick disconnect tools. So these tools allow you to remove the permanent connector. If you're not able to get these removed, we're also going to include a hose with quick connects. Then if you have the hose that has a sensor on it, so if there's a little electrical connector midway through and you can't remove it with these two pieces, you will have to break it off. You can just snip it, pull it off on this side, and then you have to replace it with the OEM electrical connector crankcase hose. So we'll have a link to that part number as well. But to remove this, it is a little tricky, so I slid that one in. Then after I slide that underneath, I'm going to slide it all the way around. Then I'm going to slide in my next one on this side to complete the circle. And then I've only done this a couple times to tell you the truth, but I'm just going to gently continue to slide it around the connector until I find where the tabs are that need to be released. And what I'm doing is I'm pulling up on these two half circle pieces. Let's see. Okay, there it is. It became disconnected. We'll pull that off. Now after we have this hose off, this is going to stay on the tube as we pull it out, and we'll have to sneak it under this hot side intercooler pipe here. Then there's either a hose clamp or a clamp on the turbo down there that we're going to reach down and get. I'll point to that. This will be really hard to see. If you can see the hose clamp head right where my finger is pointing. We've worked on this vehicle a couple times, and we actually changed this to a hose clamp versus the clamp that you'd use pliers to remove, just like a constant tension clamp, because of how much easier the hose clamp is. So we're going to use a socket to remove this hose clamp, but if yours has the constant tension clamps, just use a set of pliers. Now on the 2020 and early 2020 cars that have the blow-off valve, they have this return line that's going to the intake tube. So you can use channel locks or pliers and pinch this clamp until we get it to the locked point. And we'll pull off the hose. Pull the airbox out of the vehicle. You have the sensor on the back that you'll just depress the button here. Pulls right off. This harness, these were clipped to the airbox, those come off. Now we'll also remove these clips that are holding the top of the airbox onto the bottom. It comes off like that. We can set our filter to the side as well. And then using a 10 mil deep socket, we'll remove this nut. And as soon as this nut is off, we'll pull out the airbox. We have this front scoop that's sticking through the airbox as well. So we'll get the airbox out and we'll leave the scoop in place. Now that we have the box out of the car, we're going to remove this grommet. So take the shoulder washer, pull that out. Now get this rubber grommet out. Set the box aside. We're going to take the shoulder washer, put it in from the underside. And now we're going to drop the box in, aligning it with the two rubber grommets and the stud. So the stud will help us align everything. And then as we're putting the box in, we'll move the air scoop out of the way. Okay, so I found the grommets. Now I'm gonna take the air scoop and shove the air scoop in through the box. And there's little tabs on the OEM injection molded air scoop that will just clip into the box. We'll take our nut, put it on top of the stud, and with a 10 mil, secure our airbox down. Now we have everything laid out that came included in the box, and we're going to begin assembling our intake tubes to get them ready to be installed. First step is going to be installing this plate. So we have 4 Phillips screws, this gasket, which will just be a flat gasket. We can get these bolts started and secured down. Next, the smaller of the two fittings. This one's a metal fitting. We're switching these to plastic, so if it's black, don't be alarmed. Get this installed into the insert right next to it. Then a few turns with the wrench. It's NPT, so as soon as it starts to get tight, it's good. Next will be the grommet for the IAT. This just gets installed with the male section, sticking into the metal, or the male section on the plastic. And since we're talking about the IAT, here's the IAT on the OEM airbox. You can see there's just a little bit ledge right there, the lock, so we'll pull it back around the ledge and out, and install it just like that on our tube. Push it in and get it right over the ramp, so it's locked in place. This tube is all set. We will, now we'll move over to this tube. So we don't have this laid out in front because this car does have a blow-off valve.
if your car does not have a blow-off valve, 21 and up, you'll install our cap over this port. Now for this insert, just use the bigger plastic fitting. This does not need any Teflon tape since it's plastic, it's soft and it'll crush. You can almost get the whole thing on by hand, but we'll just give it a turn after it was tight by hand. And on this side, you can see the two little slots. This is the anti-surge piece that goes right in front of the turbo. On the passenger side, it already has a piece like this from the OEM, but since we took this piece off the OEM, we'll get it snapped into the S&B. It'll be held in place by this coupler. You can see what the inside looks like. And on the other end of this will be a hose clamp. We can go ahead and get this tight. And this will be the one to connect to the turbo, so obviously we'll leave that loose. We'll get our other coupler installed on this intake tube. And now we're all set to get these installed into the car as soon as we put our two filters in. Two filters just drop in, you push them through, and you can see the little flange that comes through the box. So we'll just work our way around the filter, just pulling it through. That's what it'll look like when it's finished, and we'll do the same for this filter as well. And one tube I had off to the side is this tube that's going to attach to the driver's side airbox. We'll get the coupler and the hose clamp installed. Now the tube that has the blow-off valve, we're going to stick it down and get it onto the turbo. The hose clamp, we want it facing upward, so you can kind of look and see where I have it. And I'm going to be holding on to the hose clamp too, so we don't lose it. And just placing the coupler right onto that turbo flange. And I'm not going to tighten up the hose clamp that's on the turbo because I want to make sure I get this position correctly. I'm going to be careful not to knock the tube off the turbo because that wasn't fun to get on. But next, we're going to put this tube on. We already have our hose clamp over the flange of the filter. And it just comes together, and we can get this hose clamp tightened on the coupler down here. Now we'll get the hose clamp on the filter tightened up as well. And lastly, we'll get the hose clamp tightened up on the turbo. This is very hard to see. But now again, if you have a blow-off valve, we're going to get the hose, the recirculating hose, installed. We'll open up the clamp, slide it onto our tube, then we'll close the clamp. Now after we have it slid on, we'll release the clamp. and make sure it's nice and snug all the way over the S&B intake bung. Now we're going to reconnect all of our fittings. So first, the IAT, which was connected to the box, the OEM box. We'll get that installed, clipped in. Next, we're going to take the small black quick connect, get that installed. I had to push in the lock to get that installed. The yellow quick connect clips over. We'll get that locked. Then this quick connect down here, slide that on. So we have all three of these connected. And then the final quick connect is going to be the one below. That's connecting the tube up to our crankcase. For this last connector, you saw us remove this from the vehicle. This one does not have a sensor in it. This is the, if your vehicle has the PCV line with a sensor that looks like this, this would need to be replaced and bought from Ford. Here's the part number. This will be on our instructions and our website. But another option on what you could do is, if you don't want to buy this from Ford, if you don't want to replace this entirely and you want to reuse this, if yours came with the electrical connector, is you can cut the nipple off right here. Then you can use the disconnect tools to remove the nipple. The problem with without trying to remove this on the tube, there's just not enough space to get under and disconnect it. So that's why the option is if you don't want to pay for the new PCV line, you can cut it there, disconnect it, and reuse the one with your sensor. Since this one does not have a sensor, we're going to use our included PCV line. We already pushed a quick connect into one side, pushed the quick connect into the other. These are push lock. You don't need hose clamps, and we'll get this installed into the vehicle. So we'll find the quick connect down there. We got that installed on the lower tube. Push down until you hear the click. Now those are all set. Now we'll get the tube installed on the other side. So we already have our hose clamp on. We need to grab our hose clamp for the smaller side of the tube. We'll have this hose clamp facing that direction. So we'll angle it like that. So it'll be really easy to get our socket on. So press it on, then press it into the filter at the same time. This is all the way seated. We'll get this tightened up, and then we'll finish up our box by putting the lid on. The filter side. Now our lid comes with a protector. On both sides, we already have it removed on one side. And we'll take the lid seal. Now your lid will have an S&B bug on it, but we couldn't wait to get the intake installed. So we didn't even have time to engrave the bug. The lid installed. The last thing we're gonna do is get this wire harness clipped into the coolant tank to clean up that IAT sensor slop. And the installation's complete. Thank you for watching. Please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.